The night was quiet except for the sound of traffic far away and the soft humming of streetlights. A guard sat on a wooden chair near the gate of an office building. His uniform was faded, his shoes had lost their shine long ago, and his eyes looked tired but calm. Every few minutes he stood up, stretched his legs, and checked the lock on the main gate before sitting back down again. He had been working there for almost 3 years. The pay was low, but it was the only job he could find after losing his last one. He lived with his wife and 2 young children in a small rented room at the edge of the city. Every morning, when he returned home after the night shift, he would quietly place his small earnings on the table and smile at his sleeping kids before taking a nap. Even though life was hard, he never complained. He had learned to stay calm and thankful. "At least I have work," he would tell his wife whenever she worried about money. But deep inside he carried a heavy weight. The pressure of unpaid rent, school fees, and the fear of not being able to give his family a better life. The winter nights were the hardest. The cold wind blew through the cracks of his booth, and he often wrapped himself in an old blanket while keeping an eye on the gate. Sometimes, stray dogs came close for warmth and he shared a piece of bread with them. It was his way of feeling less alone. He was known among the nearby workers as a kind and quiet man. The people who passed him every day rarely noticed him, but those who did always found him polite and humble. Some evenings, a tea seller stopped by and handed him a small glass of hot tea. The guard always paid even when the man said, "It's okay, you don't have to." He would smile and say, "If I don't pay today, maybe I won't have tomorrow." His days were simple. He worked through the night, rested in the morning, helped his wife in the afternoon, and went back to duty before sunset. It wasn't much, but it kept them alive. One particular night, the air was colder than usual. The sky was covered with heavy clouds, and it looked like rain was coming. The guard pulled his thin jacket tighter and watched as a few cars left the building one after another. Soon the street became empty. The lights in the offices went off and silence filled the area. He sat still, listening to the sound of wind whistling between the buildings. His stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten much since morning. His wife had saved him a small piece of bread and tea in a flask, which he planned to have later to stay awake. He took out a photo from his pocket, a picture of his children smiling, taken at a park years ago. He looked at it for a long time, lost in thought. "One day I'll take you both to school myself," he whispered softly, then smiled and put it back. Just as he was about to take a sip of tea, he heard footsteps. They were slow and uneven, like someone dragging their feet. He looked up and saw an old man walking slowly along the empty road. The man wore a long coat, but it was soaked. His hat looked old and tilted to one side. He was holding a small bag and using a stick to support himself. The guard stood up and watched carefully. The old man looked lost, confused even. Cars drove by, splashing water, but no one stopped. The guard hesitated for a second. He knew he wasn't supposed to leave his post. But something inside him wouldn't let him just stand there. He grabbed his small umbrella and walked toward the man. "Sir, are you all right?" he asked politely. The old man looked up, his face pale and tired. I was trying to find a taxi, but none would stop," the man said weakly. The guard noticed his hands were shaking. Without saying much, he removed his own jacket and placed it over the old man's shoulders. "Come, please, sit in my booth for a while. It's too cold out here." The man nodded gratefully. The guard led him to the small shelter near the gate. He helped him sit down on the wooden chair and poured some tea from his flask. "It's not much, but it will warm you up," he said. The old man took the cup with both hands, sipping slowly. "You're very kind," he said after a while. "Not many people stop for an old man these days." The guard smiled shyly. "Anyone would have done the same," he replied. But the old man shook his head. "No, son. Most people would have walked away." They sat quietly for a moment, listening to the rain that had started falling again. The guard tore his piece of bread in half and offered it to the man. "You should eat something," he said. The man looked surprised but accepted it. As they ate, the old man asked, "Do you work here every night?" "Yes," the guard said. "I've been here for some years now." "It must be hard," the man said softly. The guard smiled faintly. "It's not easy, but it's honest work. I can't complain." Something about the way the old man looked at him felt strange, like he saw more than what was in front of him. The guard didn't know it, but that night, this small act of kindness would soon change his life. After some time, the rain slowed. The old man stood up, thanking him again and again. "You don't know how much this means to me," he said. "I had almost lost hope tonight. Please take care," the guard said, helping him adjust his coat. The man smiled and added, "You remind me of someone I once knew. Someone good." Then he slowly walked away into the misty street. The guard watched until he disappeared, then quietly returned to his chair. He was soaked and shivering, but he felt oddly peaceful. He poured the last bit of tea into his cup and looked at the empty road, thinking about the stranger. He didn't know who that man was or where he had come from. Maybe he was just another lost traveler. Maybe he had a story of his own. Whatever it was, the guard felt that somehow fate had crossed their paths for a reason. The rest of the night passed silently. The guard dozed off for a few minutes before sunrise, then woke up to the honking of cars. Another day had begun, and the city was alive again. Workers rushed into the building, and the guard stood at attention as always. No one could tell that something unusual had happened that night. Something small yet meaningful. When his shift ended, he walked home with tired steps but a lighter heart. His wife greeted him with a worried look, saying the landlord had come again asking for rent. The guard just smiled and said, "Don't worry. Things will be fine." She sighed, not knowing how he managed to stay so calm. But deep inside, he had a strange feeling, a quiet belief that maybe life would surprise him one day. He didn't know when or how, but something told him that the kindness you give out somehow finds its way back. That morning, before sleeping, he looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The sun was rising slowly, painting the sky in shades of gold. He closed his eyes with a faint smile, never realizing that the old man he helped last night would soon call him, and that call would change everything he had ever known. The next evening, the guard arrived at work as usual. The rain from the night before had left the streets damp, and the cool wind carried a faint smell of wet soil. He greeted the cleaner, nodded at the driver passing by, and took his usual seat by the gate. He couldn't stop thinking about the old man. The image of that frail figure walking alone through the rain stayed in his mind. He wondered if the man had made it home safely. Maybe he lived nearby, or maybe he was just passing through. Whatever it was, the guard hoped he was warm and safe now. He reached into his pocket and found the same photo of his children. He smiled as he looked at it, then put it back. "I hope they never have to struggle like this," he whispered to himself. The night moved slowly. Only a few cars came in and out. Around midnight, he poured himself some tea and watched the streetlights flicker. His booth was small, with a single chair, a broken table, and a dim bulb that buzzed every few seconds. It wasn't much, but it was his space, his little corner of the world. He thought about how many people he had seen over the years. Some were kind and greeted him with a smile. Most walked past without even looking at him. He didn't blame them. Everyone had their own problems, their own rush. He was just part of the background. The man in the uniform who opened the gate and said, "Good evening." But last night had been different. For once, he had spoken to someone who didn't see him as invisible. The old man had looked at him with warmth, as if his kindness meant something. That small moment had made him feel human again. Hours passed, and the sound of the clock ticking inside the booth filled the silence. The guard's eyes grew heavy, but he forced himself to stay awake. He couldn't afford to fall asleep, not even for a minute. When dawn finally arrived, he stretched his arms and rubbed his eyes. The city started waking up. The first buses rumbled by, and people hurried to work. He checked the gate one last time before heading home. His wife was waiting for him with a worried look. "The rent is due tomorrow," she said quietly. He nodded. "I'll talk to the landlord today. Maybe he'll give us a few more days." She sighed and handed him a cup of tea. "You say that every month," she murmured. He didn't answer. He just took a sip of the hot tea, looking out the window. He wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but even he didn't know how. Later that afternoon, he went to the landlord's house. The man frowned as soon as he saw him. "You're late again," he said sharply. "I can't keep waiting." The guard apologized and promised to pay soon. The landlord gave him a few more days, but not without a warning. On his way back home, he stopped at a small shop and bought half a kilo of rice. That was all he could afford. The shopkeeper knew him well and smiled kindly. "You work too hard, brother," he said. "One day things will change." The guard smiled faintly. "I hope so." That night he returned to duty, just like always. But the air felt different, heavier somehow. Maybe it was the worry on his mind. He tried not to think too much about money or rent. Instead, he looked up at the sky. The stars were bright and the wind was cool. He took a deep breath and tried to stay positive. Around midnight, he heard footsteps again. For a second, he thought it might be the old man returning. But when he looked up, it was just a delivery boy dropping off some packages. Still, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something about that night long ago had meaning. He went on with his work as usual. He checked the locks, noted down car numbers, and helped a driver park near the side gate. When things got quiet again, he sat back and thought about how strange life was. One moment you were invisible, and the next a stranger could make you feel seen. He remembered the way the old man had spoken, gentle, grateful, and tired. Maybe he had no one to help him. Maybe he was like a mirror of what the guard feared becoming one day, old, alone, and forgotten. That thought made him uneasy. But then he smiled again, remembering the warmth in the man's eyes when he had said, "You're different." Those 2 words had stayed with him. He didn't know why, but they gave him strength. The next few days passed quietly. The guard kept going to work doing his duty and hoping that something somehow would change. But life went on the same. Long nights, little pay, endless worries. Then one evening, as he prepared for his shift, his son asked him a question that stopped him in his tracks. "Papa, when will you buy me a new school bag? Mine has a hole." The guard looked at the small torn bag lying on the bed. He forced a smile and said, "Soon, my boy. Very soon." He turned away so his son wouldn't see the sadness in his eyes. He knew he didn't have enough money even for that. Still, he picked up his flashlight and walked out the door. When he reached his post, he noticed a small car parked across the street. The window rolled down and a man inside looked at him for a few seconds before driving off. The guard thought nothing of it and went back to his booth. But little did he know that moment wasn't random. Someone had been looking for him. The next night was calm again. He spent the hours thinking, half dozing, half dreaming about better days. Around 3 in the morning, his phone buzzed. He rarely got calls at that hour. He checked the screen. It was an unknown number. For a moment, he thought of ignoring it, but something told him to answer. "Hello?" he said, his voice tired. There was silence for a moment, then a soft voice spoke. "Is this the guard who works near the main road office building?" "Yes, sir," he replied, puzzled. The voice continued. "Do you remember an old man you helped one rainy night?" The guard sat up straight. "Yes, sir. I remember. I've been looking for you," the voice said warmly. "This is the same old man. I wanted to thank you again. You didn't just help me that night, you saved me. I'd like to meet you tomorrow if you're free." The guard was speechless. He didn't know what to say. "Of course, sir, but I didn't do anything special," the old man chuckled softly. "That's what makes it special. You didn't expect anything in return." Before ending the call, the man gave him an address and said, "Come see me tomorrow morning. I want to talk to you in person." When the call ended, the guard sat there in silence, holding his phone. His heart was beating fast. He had no idea why the man wanted to see him, but something about his tone felt sincere. For the rest of the night, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Was it possible that his small act of kindness meant more than he realized? Could this meeting really change something in his life? As the first light of dawn touched the city, the guard leaned back and smiled faintly. "Maybe," he whispered to himself. "Maybe this is the start of something new." He didn't know what awaited him, but deep down he felt hope. A quiet, glowing hope he hadn't felt in years. And as the sun slowly rose, it seemed to carry a promise that sometimes even the smallest good deed finds its way back to you when you least expect it. The next morning, the guard woke up earlier than usual. The phone call from the night before kept echoing in his mind. He still couldn't believe that the old man had gone through all that trouble just to find him. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the slip of paper where he had written down the address. His wife noticed the strange look on his face. "Is everything all right?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "An old man I helped some time ago called me. He wants to meet me today." She smiled softly. "That's good. Maybe he just wants to thank you." "Maybe," he said quietly. But a small part of him wondered if there was more to it. He washed up, put on his cleanest shirt, the one he wore only on Fridays, and carefully folded the paper into his pocket. He didn't tell his wife that the address led to a tall office building in the center of the city. the kind of place where people like him never went. As he stepped out, the sun was already climbing higher and the air felt warm. He walked to the bus stop and waited, holding his old bag close to his chest. The bus came rattling down the road full of office workers. He squeezed inside and stood near the door. The whole ride, his mind was filled with questions. Who really was that old man? Why had he called? And what could he possibly want with a poor security guard? After almost an hour, he reached the address. The building was tall and shiny, with glass walls and polished floors. He stood outside for a few seconds, feeling nervous. He had passed by this place many times but had never gone inside. At the entrance, a young receptionist looked up and asked politely, "Can I help you, sir?" He cleared his throat. "I'm here to meet an old gentleman. He called me last night." He gave her the man's name and waited. She checked the computer, then smiled. "Yes, he's expecting you. Please go to the 10th floor." The guard blinked in surprise. He thanked her and stepped into the elevator, his heart beating faster with every floor that passed. When the doors opened, a tall man in a suit greeted him and led him to a large office. And there, sitting behind a desk near the window, was the same old man he had helped that rainy night. Only now he looked completely different. Neat clothes, shining shoes, and a calm smile on his face. The guard stopped for a moment, unsure what to say. The old man stood up, walked over, and held his hands warmly. "I'm so glad you came," he said. "Sir, I didn't expect this," the guard replied nervously. "Please sit down," the man said, pulling a chair. "You don't have to call me sir. My name is Rahim. I've been wanting to see you since that night." The guard sat down slowly, still feeling out of place in the fancy room. The smell of coffee filled the air, and sunlight poured through the large windows. Rahim smiled. "I know you probably think this is strange, but that night you showed me something I hadn't seen in years. Kindness, without expectation." The guard lowered his eyes. "I only did what anyone should," Rahim chuckled softly. "That's what makes you different. You gave me your jacket, your tea, even your food without knowing who I was. You see, that night I wasn't just lost on the road, I was lost in life too." The guard looked at him curiously. Rahim continued, his voice calm but full of emotion. "My only son passed away a few years ago. Since then I started wandering alone, not caring much about anything. That night, I felt like life had no meaning left. But your kindness, it reminded me that goodness still exists." The room fell silent. The guard didn't know what to say. He looked at the man and saw a hint of sadness in his eyes, the kind that never fully goes away. Rahim leaned back and said, "You didn't know who I was that night. But I am the owner of this company. I've lived a comfortable life, but comfort doesn't mean happiness. That night, you taught me that wealth means nothing if there's no humanity left in it." The guard was stunned. The man he had helped in the rain turned out to be a wealthy businessman. The same kind of person he saw entering big buildings while he stood outside guarding the gate. Rahim smiled kindly. "I want to help you, my friend. Not out of pity, but because you earned my respect. Tell me, what do you need?" The guard quickly shook his head. "Please, sir, I didn't do it for anything. I can't take money or favors. I was only trying to help." "That's exactly why you deserve it," Rahim said gently. "But I won't force you to accept anything. Just let me know how you're living these days." The guard hesitated, then slowly told him about his job, his family, and his struggles. He spoke quietly, sometimes embarrassed by his own story. When he finished, Rahim remained silent for a moment. "You remind me of myself when I was young," Rahim finally said. "I also started with nothing. Maybe that's why I understand your heart." He stood up, walked to his desk, and picked up an envelope. He handed it to the guard. "This isn't charity. Think of it as a thank you gift for that night. Please accept it." The guard opened it slowly and saw some money inside. It was enough to pay his rent for several months. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, this is too much," he said. Rahim smiled. "It's nothing for me, but maybe it can make a difference for you. Use it for your family." The guard stood up, his voice shaking. "I don't know how to thank you." Rahim placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just promise me one thing, keep that kindness alive. The world needs more people like you." The guard nodded silently, his eyes moist. Before leaving, Rahim gave him a card. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "There's something else I want to discuss with you." The guard thanked him again and walked out, still dazed. He stepped out of the building and looked up at the tall glass walls shining in the sunlight. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, truly seen. On the way home, he sat quietly in the bus, holding the envelope close. He didn't want to tell anyone yet, not until he understood what was really happening. When he reached home, his wife opened the door and saw the expression on his face. "What happened?" she asked quickly. He smiled softly. "Something good. Something unexpected." She looked at him with confusion as he handed her the envelope. Her eyes widened and she covered her mouth in shock. Where did this come from? He told her everything, from the night he helped the old man to the meeting that morning. She listened without saying a word, tears slowly forming in her eyes. When he finished, she hugged him tightly. "You see? Good things come back. You did something from the heart, and now life is returning that kindness." He held her close, feeling the truth in her words. For the first time in years, the heavy weight on his shoulders felt lighter. That night, he sat by the window watching the stars. He thought about how one small act, sharing a piece of bread and a cup of tea, had changed the direction of his life. He didn't know what the old man wanted to discuss the next day, but his heart was filled with gratitude and hope. He whispered softly, "Maybe this is the start of something I never dreamed of." And for the first time in a long time, he slept peacefully, unaware that the real change was yet to come, and that tomorrow would bring him news that would completely transform his life. The next morning, the guard woke up before the sun. He hadn't slept much. His mind was restless, replaying every word the old man had said the day before. He kept wondering what else the man wanted to talk about. He got ready carefully, wearing the same clean shirt from yesterday. His wife had ironed it for him, even though their iron barely worked anymore. "Be polite," she said with a small smile. "And don't be afraid." "You did nothing wrong," he nodded. "I'm not afraid," he said quietly. "Just nervous." Before leaving, his little daughter ran up to him and hugged his leg. "Bring sweets when you come home," she said cheerfully. He smiled and patted her head. "I will," he promised, even though he didn't know what would happen that day. The bus ride felt longer than usual. His hands were slightly trembling as he looked out the window. The same streets passed by, the same shops, the same people rushing to work. But somehow everything felt different now. When he reached the tall glass building again, he took a deep breath before walking inside. The receptionist recognized him right away and smiled. "Good morning, sir. He's waiting for you upstairs." "Sir." She called him sir. That one small word made his chest tighten a little. He wasn't used to being addressed with respect. When the elevator doors opened on the 10th floor, he saw Rahim standing near the window, talking to someone. The old man turned as soon as he entered, his face lighting up with a kind smile. "Ah, there you are," Rahim said. Come in, come in." "I've been waiting." The guard stepped forward shyly. "Good morning, sir." "Good morning," Rahim said warmly. "Please sit. I wanted to talk to you about something important today." The guard sat down, his heart beating fast. He had no idea what was coming. Rahim leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "You told me yesterday about your job, the long hours, the low pay, and how you're struggling to take care of your family." The guard lowered his head slightly. "Yes, sir. But I'm thankful I still have work." Rahim nodded slowly. "That humility of yours is rare. Most people would have complained, but you didn't. And that tells me everything I need to know about your character." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I've been thinking about it since yesterday. You deserve better, not because you helped me, but because you've earned it through your honesty and hard work." The guard looked confused. "I don't understand, sir." Rahim smiled gently. "I want to offer you a job here, in my company. I need someone I can trust to manage our security department. You've spent years guarding buildings like this. Who better to lead the team than someone who's done the work himself?" The guard froze. For a few seconds, he didn't even blink. "Sir, me?" he said softly. "Head of security? But I'm not educated enough. I don't even speak English well. I've never led anyone." Rahim chuckled kindly. "Don't worry about that. I'll help you learn what you need. You already have the most important thing, honesty. The rest can be taught." The guard's throat tightened. He couldn't find words. His eyes filled with tears, but he quickly looked away, embarrassed. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." Rahim stood up and walked around the desk, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Don't thank me. You already did that rainy night when you helped a stranger. You see, kindness has a way of finding its way back, and even if it takes time." The guard nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. When should I start, sir? Rahim smiled. Tomorrow morning. And don't worry about your uniform or anything. My assistant will help you with everything you need. He paused for a moment, then added, There's one more thing. You'll have a proper salary now, enough to take care of your family comfortably, and a small apartment near the office so you won't have to travel so far every day. The guard's mouth fell open slightly. An apartment? Yes, Rahim said. It's company housing. You've earned it. For the first time in years, the guard couldn't hold back his tears. He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking quietly. Rahim didn't interrupt. He just waited, smiling softly, knowing what it meant to that man. After a while, the guard wiped his eyes and stood up. I never thought something like this could happen to me, he said. I don't even know why you're doing all this. Rahim looked at him with deep kindness. Because once long ago, someone helped me too. I was poor and lost, and a stranger gave me a chance. I never forgot that. Maybe this is my turn to do the same for someone else? The guard felt his heart ache with emotion. I will never forget this, sir. I promise I'll give my best, Rahim smiled. That's all I ask. After they finished talking, Rahim's assistant took the guard to the HR office, where they discussed his new role and paperwork. The staff treated him with surprising respect. For the first time, he wasn't just the security guy standing outside. He was being welcomed as part of something bigger. When he stepped out of the building later that day, the sunlight felt warmer than ever. The noise of traffic, the smell of dust, the rush of people, everything seemed brighter, lighter. He stood on the sidewalk for a long time, holding the papers that confirmed his new job. His eyes lifted toward the sky, and he whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. That evening, when he reached home, his wife was washing clothes outside. She looked up and saw the expression on his face. Something happened, didn't it? She asked, drying her hands. He smiled, tears shining in his eyes. Pack your things, he said softly. We're moving. She stared at him, confused. Moving where? He handed her the papers. To a new house. And I got a new job, a real one. For a second, she didn't move. Then she covered her mouth, tears rolling down her cheeks. You're not joking? He shook his head. Not this time. She hugged him tightly, crying and laughing at the same time. Their children came running, asking what was happening. The guard lifted his daughter into his arms. We're going to live in a new home, he said with a smile. That night, they all sat together, talking and dreaming about their new life. There was laughter in their small room for the first time in years. Later, when everyone had fallen asleep, the guard sat near the window again. He looked out at the streetlights flickering in the distance. It was hard to believe that just a few days ago, he had been worrying about rent and food. He remembered the rain, the shivering old man, the cup of tea they shared. Who would have thought that moment would change his life? He whispered softly, one good deed can truly change everything. The next morning, he woke up early and went to his new job. The office staff greeted him with smiles, and the other guards looked at him with admiration. He was nervous but proud. When he walked into Rahim's office, the old man looked up and smiled. Welcome aboard, he said warmly. The guard nodded with gratitude. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. Rahim smiled and said, I know you won't. As the day went on, the guard learned his duties, met his new team, and started to feel like he truly belonged. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one built not on luck but on kindness, honesty, and a little bit of faith. And though he didn't know it yet, this was only the start. There was still one more surprise waiting for him, one that would prove that good hearts never go unnoticed. A few months passed since the day the guard had started his new job at the company. Every morning he arrived early, making sure the security staff were alert, the building was safe, and everything ran smoothly. He was no longer the man who stood outside in the sun for hours with worn-out shoes. Now he wore a clean uniform, carried a small office bag, and had his own desk in the security department. But despite all those changes, he stayed the same humble man he had always been. He still greeted every cleaner, every driver, and every guard by name. He still shared his lunch with those who forgot theirs, and every day, he still thanked the old man who had given him a chance to live with dignity again. At home, life had changed too. His wife no longer had to worry about the rent or grocery bills. Their children had started going to a better school nearby. They had a small apartment that was simple but clean, with white walls and a tiny balcony where his wife planted flowers. Sometimes, at night, the guard would sit outside with a cup of tea, listening to his children's laughter echo through the small rooms. Those sounds made him smile. He felt rich, not because of money, but because peace had returned to his home. One Friday evening, while he was finishing his reports in the office, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered. "Hello? Good evening," said a voice on the other end. "Is this the head of security, Mr. Khan?" "Yes, speaking," he replied politely. "This is from the mayor's office," the voice said. "We would like to inform you that you've been nominated for the city's Good Citizen Award. Please come to the community hall tomorrow morning at 10. The guard blinked in surprise. "Good Citizen Award? There must be some mistake," he said. "No mistake, sir," the voice replied. "Your name was recommended by Mr. Rahim. Congratulations." For a few seconds, the guard couldn't speak. His heart started to beat fast. He thanked the caller and slowly put the phone down. He sat there quietly for a long time, looking at the floor. He remembered the night when he stood in the rain, helping the old man who had no umbrella. He never imagined that one small act of kindness could lead him to something like this. When he went home that night and told his family, his wife gasped and covered her mouth. The children jumped with excitement, clapping and shouting, "Abba is getting an award." The next morning he wore his best clothes, a neat white shirt, polished shoes, and the same wristwatch the old man had once repaired for him. His wife and children went with him, sitting proudly in the audience as the event began. The hall was full of people, teachers, workers, volunteers, and city officials. When the announcer called his name, the guard stood up slowly and walked toward the stage. The lights were bright and the applause echoed all around him. The announcer smiled as he said, "Today we honor a man who proved that kindness still exists in this world. He was once a poor security guard who helped a stranger on a rainy night, without expecting anything in return. That stranger later became the reason his life changed forever. Please welcome Mr. Khan." The guard's eyes searched the crowd and he found Rahim sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. Their eyes met and for a second, everything else disappeared. As he reached the stage, the mayor handed him a glass plaque with his name on it. "You remind us that doing good doesn't need wealth or power," the mayor said. "It only needs a good heart." The audience clapped again and the guard felt tears well up in his eyes. He took the microphone with trembling hands. "I don't know if I deserve this," he began softly. "I didn't do anything big. I just helped someone because it was the right thing to do. I didn't know who he was. I didn't expect anything back. But that moment taught me something. That kindness never goes to waste. It always comes back in ways we don't expect." He paused and took a deep breath. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's that you don't need to be rich to change someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is a little compassion. I thank God, my family, and especially Mr. Rahim, the man who showed me that helping others is never a mistake." He looked toward Rahim, who stood up and clapped with tears in his eyes. After the ceremony, reporters came to take pictures. The guard felt shy but smiled politely. His children held his hands proudly, showing everyone the award. When they returned home, the neighborhood gathered around to congratulate him. Some people who had once ignored him now treated him with respect. He didn't feel proud in an arrogant way. He felt grateful. Later that evening, Rahim visited his home. The guard rushed to greet him, offering him a seat and a cup of tea. Rahim looked around the small but cozy apartment and smiled. "You've made this place feel like a home," he said warmly. The guard smiled. "Because of you, sir. None of this would have happened without your kindness." Rahim shook his head. "No, my friend. You earned it. I just gave you the opportunity. You're the one who turned it into something beautiful." They both sat in silence for a moment, sipping tea. Then Rahim said, "You know, I've been thinking about something. I'm retiring soon, and I want someone I trust to manage my foundation. Someone who understands what it means to struggle and still stay honest." The guard looked surprised. "Me," Rahim nodded. "Yes, you. You've already proven your heart. The foundation helps poor families and workers. Who better to lead it than someone who has lived that life himself?" The guard didn't know what to say. He felt his throat tighten. "Sir, I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility." Rahim smiled. "You are. You just don't know it yet. I'll guide you step by step." The guard lowered his eyes, overwhelmed. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best." Rahim patted his shoulder gently. "That's all I need to hear." From that day, the guard's journey took another turn. He started learning about charity work, community programs, and helping others. Every weekend, he visited small villages with food supplies and school materials. He talked to struggling workers, reminding them never to lose hope. One afternoon, while standing on a stage at a community event, he saw a young man in the crowd helping an old woman find a seat. The sight made him smile. He thought about how one act of kindness could create another, like ripples in water. Years later, people still talked about the story of the poor guard who helped an old man. It became a reminder that goodness doesn't need a big audience. It just needs the right heart. Every morning before leaving for work, he still looked at that old watch on his wrist, the one Rahim had fixed. It had a small scratch on its glass, but he never replaced it. It reminded him of where he came from and how far kindness had taken him. One day, while locking the door behind him, his daughter asked, "Abba, why do you still wear that old watch?" "You can buy a new one now." He smiled and said, "Because this one reminds me that even old things can still tell the right time, just like old acts of kindness still make the world better." And with that, he walked out, greeting the neighbors with his usual smile, his heart full of peace. The rain started again that evening, soft and steady. As he stood under his umbrella, watching the drops hit the ground, he whispered to himself, "Kindness never disappears. It just finds its way back, sometimes when you least expect it." And that was the truth of his life. A poor guard who once helped an old man, and in return, found not just success but the kind of happiness money could never buy.